So I played Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and in this video I'll be giving a review of the game after around 20 plus hours played and my overall thoughts to answer the question of if you should buy it, as I know some people may already be skeptical because of what they heard of the game so far. Therefore this will be a very honest review and I'll mention the good and the parts that could be improved. Now the game has been out for around 3 days as of recording, and it released on Friday, so let's jump in. So of course Jedi Survivor is the sequel to the 2019 release Jedi Fallen Order, and it's safe to say that it has been one of the most anticipated games for this year. With the success of Fallen Order and how much people enjoyed that game, I must admit that this one has been an amazing experience that I thoroughly enjoyed and was a top tier sequel. Which is funny because when I played Fallen Order I already didn't see it being one of my all-time favourite games, and although it was a great run through I did have a handful of things to say about it and parts that could have easily been improved and added to. I definitely didn't feel as engaged as I was in this game, so they must have done something right this time round. Now with Fallen Order I think the key aspects for me and many others would be the combat in the game and also the character arcs. However, the many repetitive and lackluster puzzle missions, and though I thought it was really fun, after a while the overall combat seemed to feel like it could have been added to and expanded on a lot more. Now I actually don't mind puzzles in games, so it wasn't that aspect alone for me, and however I'm sure others may not fully grasp with that, they may not be a fan of that style of gameplay, but for me it mainly was just some of the missions being fairly boring and very repetitive compared to Survivor, where I'm pleased to say that it has a lot more variety going on and many different gameplay features being added to keep you much more entertained and engaged in the various encounters with enemies and puzzles, so then it doesn't become tedious, which is perfect for a sequel, so it doesn't feel like a dragged out story put into the same game. Instead it does a lot differently in terms of everything else, such as gameplay, combat and open world exploration, which I'm really glad about because instantly after playing Fallen Order I knew for a certain that there was much more potential in the game, making the sequel feel fun and yes, even better than the first game. The collection system is endless with so much more to explore on each planet and various ways to unlock chests in terms of puzzles and parkour, with so many different items to find that will go towards customizing Cal as well as BD1 or your lightsaber. They definitely improved on customization a lot more with so many different colorways to unlock, and not only on BD1 but also your saber design or material, rather than just a few color options which we already had before. Then there's of course so many items of clothing for Cal, as well as the multiple beard and hairstyle options which allows you to fully alter Cal's appearance and items as you wish. In terms of additions to the game, the combat has been fully expanded and feels not only a lot smoother in terms of just animation and very fast paced, but just completely overhauled with much more unlockable moves and techniques available, of course in the skill tree once again like in the first game, but there's so much more to choose from and so much more variety with many sections in terms of the three main ones being survival, lightsaber and force. And even after that you can choose from the various trees in that designated section, so you're always unlocking a new ability as well as different stances to switch between, and having dual wield, dual blade and single lightsabers. There's so many unique ways to fight and so much more control experimentation with each encounter, making you really look forward to what's next, so you can just test it out and many more methods of combat compared to the limited selection in the previous game, where after a while it doesn't feel as engaging and becomes slightly repetitive. Of course, still being able to deflect blaster shots, force people away off edges. You can still integrate objects into your combat and use the force to launch them at enemies, as well as using explosives to solve various puzzle-like missions and blocked areas, which I really liked. I'm also so glad that there's so much more variety in player types as well as unique bosses you go up against, which felt very limited once again before, and allows for a more fresh and fluid experience, as well as when fighting them all it may seem to take a little bit more thought when, going up against them. Another key and improved aspect of Survivor is definitely the parkour and just the overall traversal gameplay, with a much more smoother system that allows you to easily traverse through the game when climbing and getting around places. Many different features were added, such as ceiling climbing to provide a more engaging and fun way to climb, as well as jumping from a left wall to a right one to then traverse upwards. Then there's the ascension cable, which is basically a grapple gun, making it so much more easier to get over bigger gaps and jump further distances. Even the addition of mounts which you can tame and and you can ride various creatures on the planets to get around places that are a lot more open and sparse, which there isn't much to climb onto. Then there's even a flying mount as well to quickly fly back to your ship or places that are much harder to reach or you want to go back to, and it does allow for some great views. Now funny enough, this wasn't actually implemented that much, and I quite liked it that way, as it didn't take away from the overall theme and traverse system, though the times where I did, I really enjoyed it. Then just in terms of the overall world and exploration, it's of course going to be so much more rich and detailed, which was clear in the various trailers and teasers, especially with there being so much more freedom after 4 years, and the release of next gen consoles as well. The many different planets you explore, and they're all so different and unique, and the overall terrain is just so varied compared to Fallen Order. Now it does feel like I'm always mentioning the first game, but due to it being a sequel and the same series, that comparison is naturally going to come up. So with the Fallen Order's first planet you land on, it's so sparse and really dull with just grasslands and the odd building there. Then when you first start Survivor, you're instantly placed in this massive futuristic city-like world with so much detail and an array of ways to get around the many tall structures so early on. Just so much action and excitement straight away, which was such a perfect opening for the game to already show you that it's been improved. Obviously with Fallen Order you do gradually learn the techniques all used at once in the second game, which does make sense because you grow and learn as Cal in the first game, and that's going to be a part of it. But just so much variety, and I could tell there's so much time and thought had been taken into each area you explore. And one of the most helpful features of course is the fast travel, so it's a good thing to explore all the fast travel points around the planets for when you need to go back or move to somewhere else, which of course goes well with the unlockable shortcuts which are already there like in the first game. Now the story does take place 5 years after the end of the events of Fallen Order, and even though, as I mentioned in my review of Fallen Order, the first game does focus in on more of a vulnerable and emotional side of Cal as a character, and though yes he is a Jedi and he's trying to restore the Jedi Order, the game does portray his internal struggles. I'd say it focuses on it a lot more in the sequel, which is crazy, and how he is one, truly determined to always carry on, but also how it really affects him as well, and it doesn't always come out victorious. You clearly see Cal's character gradually become more fearless, and that was kind of the whole theme, and he does become stronger as a character. Now the Mantis crew in Survivor at the start, they had split up and become a lot more independent, even though there's a lot more challenges to face as Cal with the whole Galactic Empire. So his overall plan to be free and away from them, I do feel like players can empathise even more in this game with Cal's character, and the overall idea of not failing and to live with fear, as well as becoming more and more determined as you progress. And Cal's always pushing himself so hard until it's over. The only complaint, which was a slight shame, as I also said this with the Fallen Order review, now some may not mind it and they're fine with it, but at times the story can be somewhat predictable, which could be a turn off for some players who have played a vast majority of video games, and from that it can be obvious what the next turn is. There's also some points which may feel out of place and a tiny bit confusing to focus on, with parts being a bit too much, and overall it does provide an immersive and very action-packed story to follow, with many emotional areas as well that portrays more of Cal's reliability side, as I mentioned, and it's a lot more in this game. Now I know some people may want to know if you need to play the first game beforehand or if you can just skip it, and I'd say yes, for sure you do. It provides so much backstory and context, and it'll be quite hard to know what's going on. So yeah, definitely you do meet many characters from the first game after so long, which was cool to see. And as mentioned, the crew did go their separate ways, so there's a lot of new branches in the timeline with a much more new and independent focus in the story, which some may like more than others. Now it is time to address the, I'd say, elephant in the room, and that is the performance issues primarily on PC, with pretty much all high tier and capable PCs not being able to run at 60 FPS, with the max being around 40 to, if you're lucky and have the top end parts, maybe 55, and that's usually at minimal areas with close rendering and less view distance. Then when you move around and move on, and definitely more in the second planet, it's probably the worst it can be. It's crazy, even with lowering effects and even resolution, there's always little to no difference whatsoever, especially with Survivor being as fast paced as it is in combat and parkour, along with one of the biggest and vast worlds in a video game. It definitely does lose the engagement with all the major stuttering involved, no matter the settings or even the build. Not only that, and funny enough I didn't actually experience it being too bad, but I've heard about many audio issues, mainly in cutscenes, where it might be kind of delayed and the audio's glitched out entirely, and of course, like always, the occasional bug or text to pop in, though both of these I didn't see too much. compared to the giant FPS drop. Now they have said they're working on it and working on fixes that they believe will improve the performance and will do as soon as possible, but each patch they did say that it does require a lot of testing to ensure it doesn't introduce new problems. So for the moment it's a case of waiting, though it may be a shame. I still enjoyed playing and it felt very engaging compared to Fallen Order in my opinion, even just early on in the game. And of course it still was playable, obviously not as smooth as we were hoping. It's not like it's 10 FPS, it's still okay. And that is pretty much it. That's my overall review of Star Wars Jedi Survivor and my thoughts on the game to let you all know if it's worth playing and buying. If you found this video helpful or enjoyed it, then I'd really appreciate if you'd like the video down below. And if you are new or you want to see more, then you can subscribe to the channel as well. I do various reviews on many video games with a lot of upcoming videos, so stay tuned for that. And I really hope you enjoyed it, and comment down below if you've played Star Wars Jedi Survivor and what are your thoughts. I'll see you all in the next one, and bye bye.